Welcome to King for the Day, your racing's dictator.
We have to make it so bad that nobody would ever contemplate doing it again.
But is it right that the jockey who rides the horse gets less than the stable staff?
The integrity of racing in Britain remains the envy of the world.
The least price in 1991 was £2,178 for the winner.
So Mr. John McCurrick is an owner. He's just got 10,000 quid. He may have to give another £100 to the jockey.
What changes and reforms would you introduce?
Jockeys receive a fixed fee for a ride, and they receive a fixed percentage for riding winners, and everyone gets the same. And that is forced upon them by racing.
John Brown, the last of the old-style bookmakers, a throwback to an age when bookies were brought up loving the game, understanding odds, and were canny risk-takers, so different from today's city suits and number crunchers. From street bookmaking to all aspects of the business, learnt during 44 years at William Hill, rising from T-boy to be chief executive and chairman before retiring in 2003, after steering Hills from near insolvency, various traumatic changes of ownership, possible city flotations to be a £1 billion plus company, JB became the first of the modern bookmakers and was a key player in persuading the government to abolish on and off-course betting tax based on turnover to a gross profits tax in 2001. A shrewd punter and enthusiastic racehorse owner, JB welcome to King for a Day. After decades of confrontation with racing's rulers, you're now the dictator. What changes and reforms would you introduce?
As I walk through the door, I would want to be dealing with integrity and safety. Recent events with Godolphin and Gerard Butler may just be isolated events, but they may also be the tip of a very big iceberg. And as racing, it depends on its integrity, the trust of the punters, the trust of the racegoers, that everything is as straight as possible and it's a level playing field. We would have to deal with that. I think I would introduce punitive punishment. I would ban any horse found having been doped for at least 1 year and possibly up to 3 years, depending on the severity of it. And I think I would say that all other horses in the same ownership would be banned for at least 6 months, irrespective of whether they tested for doping or not. We have to make it so bad that nobody would ever contemplate doing it again.
The BHA have recently announced an increased funding for integrity issues like more stable visits, more testing. Have they gone far enough?
I don't know what they've increased it by, but they have to get to the stage where there's no chance of people being undetected, if that's possible. But certainly those that are detected, they would have to lose their licence, which they do anyhow. But I think the punishment should go on to the horses as well, so that if a trainer doped a horse and it got banned for a year, the owner of that horse would sue his trainer for the loss of revenue and ruin their life, so that nobody would ever think of doing it again.
But for the sake of integrity, you've got to have a virtual police force going round stables, regular testing. How much more of that would you bring in? And the other thing is, would you test regularly jockeys for drink and drugs, for instance?
Oh, well, I think as part of integrity and also safety, jockeys, I believe, again because of recent events where several have been found under the influence of drink when they arrived, and others have been drug tested. I think every single day a jockey goes to the track, half hour before his first ride, he should take a breath test.
Every jockey?
Every jockey, every day, half hour before his first ride, has to pass a blow-in-the-bag breath test.
Yeah.
And at least once a month they should take a drug test. I mean, these are people...
Random, they wouldn't know.
No, well, random during the month,
yes,
absolutely,
yeah.
But they would have to take a drug test at least once a month. And even when they're away, they should take one every month for 12 months, so there can be no, sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. I think people's lives are at risk here. You talk about drink driving, drink riding in a race, on a racehorse or jump racing or under the influence of drugs is terrible.
But this is going to cost a lot of money if your reform is brought in, the enforcement of it.
But I think it's going to be a lot of money absolutely well spent. If you don't have integrity in racing, if you don't have the belief of punters that everything is a level playing field, you've got nothing.
But
you can't spend enough money on it.
But haven't the BHA really improved the integrity services of disqualifications, horses losing races, jockeys being banned? We've had Eddie Ahern for 10 years this year, just for one example. Hasn't so much more been done by the security forces now than was ever done in the past?
Absolutely, and it's no criticism to say that they've done nothing. I just don't think it's gone far enough, and certainly the action as far as the horses was concerned on the recent events was not punitive enough. I think it has to be so punitive that no stable would ever contemplate doing it again. If a horse is banned for a year, and in absolute cases where it's been well known that they've been doing it within the stable, banned for 3 years, ruin them.
But obviously the key player in this scenario recently has been Godolphin. Would you allow the St Leger winner Enki, for instance, to come back now, or must he wait or never race again, for using the example?
I think, given that in the circumstances we are with Godolphin, where it's been accepted that nobody knew except the trainer, I certainly think it should have been a 1-year ban for all the horses involved, not 6 months.
Well, a year's passed now. By now it has passed since.
Yes,
Enki
so
won.
he would come back. But I think if it had been shown that other people within the yard knew, then it would have been a 3-year ban.
And how much do you think the public really is concerned about integrity? They've always said, my horse wasn't trying, jockey's not trying. That's been the cry in every betting shop in the land. So how much now are they more concerned than they were?
I think this has left a really bad smell over racing, and I think it's left a worry for other owners. I'm a small owner, and I've raced against these people, and now you wonder. And I shouldn't have to wonder. I should be absolutely certain in my mind that we're all on a level playing field. And you can't spend enough money on that. If you want punters to carry on betting, if you don't want them to switch to other sports, they've got to trust the one they are betting on.
Now, part of the increase you want in integrity and enforcement, of course, comes down to racing funding. How does the system work now? How would you change it?
Well, I think the second thing I would concentrate on, and one thing I think racing has got terribly wrong at the moment, is you have to keep the levy. They have been granted a wonderful right pre us joining the EU. It's privileged. They couldn't have it now, and yet they seem determined to give up what anybody else would be screaming to get and are not allowed to have.
Yeah, but JB, you're a free marketeer. You believe in the rampage, in the market forces of what the public wants. Why should racing alone of all industries be specially protected?
They shouldn't. But they've got it, so why would you give it up? I have no understanding why they are trying to give away what they've got and couldn't possibly get now. And yet they're giving it away or attempting to give it away, or in discussions to give it away, in return for a commercial deal where they have no commercial rights. That I can see, the only commercial rights that in racing belong to the racecourses. They have gone, and we can give you some figures. Back in 2000, the levy was 60 million, pictures was 20 million. The levy is now 75 million, and pictures is 77 million. All of it going to the racecourses, no control from the restoration of how it's spent, and they are commercial enterprises. The only income that BHA has, apart from owners' fees, is the levy. And they're giving it away, or wanting to give it away. If I was there now, I would sign a 10-year deal with bookmakers tomorrow on the same terms as the last levy deal.
Would bookmakers agree to that?
I don't see why they would not. It takes all the uncertainty away from both sides. It seems a fair deal to me that it's I don't know the exact figure these days, but it's around 10% of the gross profits from racing. If that's enshrined for the next 10 years, government will forget it. Racing is guaranteed it's 10%. Bookmakers know for the next 10 years that it's 10%, and whatever is needed to enshrine that in law, that it has to be automatically renewed on an annual basis, maybe, but there's just a pre-agreement that it's going to be renewed, and they get on it and they keep what they've got. This is the only money coming into racing that has an unbiased distribution to it. racecourses at the moment choose what they want to do with it.
Do you believe racecourses have too much power now?
I certainly think they have the power the commercial rights give them. That may well be too much power from a BHA point of view, but nothing you can do about it that I can see. I would love, as chairman, if I was a king, to say they have to put the money they get from pictures into prize money, and there'd be a minimum prize money equivalent to what they get per race.
What would be the minimum value you could race for under your rule?
I would say you should have a minimum value of £5,000 a race, funded by the racecourses, coming from their picture rights. Whether I could impose that or not, I don't know. But that's what I think it should be, and if I certainly would want to enter talks with them to do that, and I would certainly want to stop them racing if they didn't do it, if it was within my power.
And the racecourses would pay for this extra funding for prize money?
Absolutely. They would take it from their picture rights. I'm sure their picture rights at the moment must come to probably more than £5,000 a race, the amount of money they're getting. So for them to have a minimum value of £5,000 for the good of racing, that's what I would make it.
And it's not £5,000 to the winner, the whole race.
This is the race,
fund.
Yes,
yeah.
But a minimum prize. It doesn't stop the bigger prizes for other races under normal way.
How much is prize money so vital to the industry, and how it's distributed now between the top echelon, which the public love, and the very lower grade racing that keeps the industry going in harder times?
Well, I think that there's a difficulty here all round. I personally lean towards two-tier racing, where the bottom tier, the all-weather tracks, would receive no funding from the levy, when in fact on this system I'm proposing they wouldn't, because the prize money would come from the racecourses themselves, from their picture rights, and all the levy could be directed towards the upper echelons of racing.
But that's elitist though, isn't it, JJ?
It might be elitist, but we race horses to find out which is the best, and the prize money should be directed towards the best. That's my view. I race my horses on the all-weather when they're poor enough, that's all they can race on. And I don't see anything wrong with that. I don't see how there can ever be big increases in prize money in the future. And therefore, probably looking to the future, we have to start thinking now, or the BHA, or me as king of the BHA for today, has to start thinking now, should we be moving towards the American system on all-weather tracks, where you have 10, 15 barns of 20 or 30 horses on the track, horses trained on the track, swimming pools on the track, vets on the track, everything there to cut, travelling there, so the people don't need to pay for travel, to keep the expenses down, to promote that sort of racing, which it is needed to raise levy.
But trainers do bring horses, often from hundreds of miles away, to race on the all-weather. Would they still be allowed to do that?
Of course, nothing would stop them doing that, but there will be this group of trainers based at each track in fairly large numbers, I think, because it seems to me more and more of it is going to be directed towards the smaller, or more and more horses are poor than there are. There are more poor horses than good horses. And if you get the expenses down for training those and put them on the track, there will be people enjoying ownership. They'll be there for racing and raising levy, particularly as we're not going to get, I can't see anywhere when there's large amounts of extra prize money going to come from. So if you can't have more prize money, get the cost down.
Do we need more prize money, JB? There's still, right, the horse population is falling and there are smaller fields at times, but generally races fail. There's enough horses to go around.
I think there's enough horses to go around at the moment, and enough to support racing, and we probably, with my old bookmakers hat on, but even as chairman of the BHA, I think their income at the moment with pitches and levy is £151 million a year. That should be enough, properly distributed, to support the programme and keep owners in the business. And as we can tell from the sales, it don't seem to affect sales prices, which are setting records again.
But only at the top level.
Well, you try and buy a horse in the middle level, and the people who can't buy at the top level that wanted to are now buying at the middle, and it trickles down to only at the very bottom end as the cost of horses affordable for the ordinary person.
Putting in a tremendous late bid as they go to the line. Rebel Fitz with on the near side.
Stan and James are at the races. StanJames.com.
We all love our cats and dogs. So isn't it great to know you don't have to worry about them? Because they've got Direct Line cover. And right now there's 15% off. Plus another 15% multi-pet discount. So you can rest easy. We're not on price comparison sites, so take the Direct Line.
Putting in a tremendous late bid as they go to the line. Rebel Fitz with on the near side.
Stan and James are at the races. StanJames.com.
Keeping to your theme on the levy and the money coming into racing, as a bookmaker, there are calls from certain bookmakers now that races should start earlier to get the lunchtime trade in. Now, they do in the winter, 12:10, 12:15 starts, even earlier than that at times, but it'll soon go back to 2 o'clock, 2:30s. Do you think that racing should put on events at around 12, 12:30 just to catch the betting shop punters who bet during the lunch period and then go back to work?
Well, I think if this was the all-weather racing and 5 grand races, low prize money, I can't see a problem with that. And certainly, as a king of racing for the day, I would want to listen to what the bookmakers wanted.
Do you find, is that a true, are bookmakers correct in saying that more money would be bet on these lunchtime races than now starting at, say, 2 o'clock, 2:30?
One of my problems here, John, is I'm 8 years out of the industry and I don't have figures, and it would have to be experimental, wouldn't it? It would have to be that you put it on and you put several on and you see what turnover it raised, whether the bookmakers were right or wrong. But certainly I feel you work with your customers and they must be a prime customer of the BHA.
You've also quite strong views on jockeys' fees and percentages that they get.
Well, I think one of the other things I would look at is anti-competitive behaviour. I believe there is a certain amount of anti-competitive behaviour, and I've believed it for a number of years within racing. And two aspects of this. One I raised back in 2000 when I made the speech on gross profits tax. I included in that speech that jockeys receive a fixed fee for a ride, and they receive a fixed percentage for riding winners, and everyone gets the same. And that is forced upon them by racing. There's no, well, I will ride for half the fee, or I will ride for twice the fee, or I would not take any percentage of the winnings, or I want twice as much percentage.
This happens in the commercial world.
In the commercial world,
you sell your services.
You set a fee. You sell yourself for what you can get from the owners.
But how about a young apprentice coming along, taking on, say, A.P. McCoy or Richard Hughes? What chance would they have under your system?
Far better chance, in my view, because A.P. McCoy, I suspect, and Richard Hughes or Ryan Moore wouldn't take the standard fee and the percentage. They would probably want twice the standard fee. And the apprentice could say, well, I'll take this fee or even half that fee to get going. And I've never really understood that, given the choice of having A.P. McCoy or one of the lesser jump jockeys, there's no point in naming them, that have never had the chance to ride so many horses or good horses, and you get them for the same price. This is why A.P. McCoy's agent can choose whatever horse he likes to ride, virtually.
And now, of course, under your system, A.P. McCoy would charge more.
The agent would be saying he wants 3 times.
The owner and the trainer would say, no, I can get somebody not as good as you, but nevertheless adequate at a much lower fee. And
give the jockeys that are learning their trade more opportunities to ride and more opportunities to ride good horses, because they're being very competitive with their pricing.
Would you see a downside to this, that the public love to go racing, to see A.P. McCoy, to see Frankie Dettori, Richard Hughes, Ryan Moore, those kind of stars, that they would then get, under your system, apparently, would get less rides, and the public would be deprived of seeing the stars that they want to see?
I don't think they would get less rides, because they would set their fee at a level where they got the rides. But what would happen is they wouldn't necessarily get all the good rides. Unless the owner particularly is willing to pay the price. If you've got a choice of the top jockey at £400 a ride and one of the middle jockeys at £100 a ride, you may very well choose to go for the £100. At the moment, they all get £100. Yeah. Therefore,
well, it's 180 and
well, they all get 100.
140 quid.
The figures are not absolutely correct, but the point is they all get exactly the same fee. That seems to me very, very anti-competitive, and does against jockeys on the way up. and works in favour of those that are at the top of their game, where they get the best of all the rides.
So marketing would decide it on price.
Absolutely.
You say, as
Absolutely.
happens in the free market.
Yes, well, I would see a system, something like once a month, the jockeys would notify Weatherby's of what their fee would be for the following month for taking a ride, what their percentage of winnings they wanted for taking a ride. Then it's up to the trainer and owner to choose which jockey suits their price. At the moment, you get them all for the same price, so it's very easy. We all want McCoy, or we all want Richard Johnson, or we all want Ryan Moore. Or so wrong. It's so anti-competitive that it should be done away with. It's archaic. They're almost back to the days when they doffed their cap at people and said, "Oh, thank you very much, sir, for the £0.50."
Well, I always think that's one of the nice things when a jockey goes into the paddock and sort of touches his cap to the owner. I think it's absolutely splendid.
Well, he can do that, but he doesn't have to do it because he's beholden on the fee. He should set his own fee.
But talking about fees and restrictions and benefits, the Racehorse Owners Association, you've always campaigned against what you regard as unfair practices by them.
I've always believed that racing is giving the Racehorse Owners Association an anti-competitive advantage. They allow them, when you become an owner, you get a form to fill in to become an owner, and unless you tick a box on that form, you are automatically enrolled in the Racehorse Owners Association. That is so wrong. You should tick the box if you want to be in it, not tick one to stay out of it. I can't believe how many people must fall foul of that.
Well, Channel 4's Jim McGrath has really campaigned against this, and I think one of the reasons why he left, unfortunately, he left the British Horse Racing Authority was because of this aspect of the Racehorse Owners Association having virtually a closed shop if you aren't a member.
Well, I think it's wrong. I agree.
Are you a member of the ROA?
I am not a member of the ROA. I would never become a member of the ROA because of that, and it works against me because another part of it is when you go to pay your fees to become an owner or register your colours, which you do annually, you pay more money than somebody who's in the ROA.
But they would say, you've joined the club, you've paid to become a member of the club, these are the perks, the benefits of joining. There's lots of other industries, lots of other commercial operations have special incentives to join them and you gain benefits from it. What's wrong with that?
There's nothing wrong with it if it's the ROA giving me the incentive, but it's not. It's the Racing Authority that's giving me the incentive. They're reducing the fee for Racehorse Owners Association members. Why? They get nothing out of the membership of the ROA. That goes to the ROA, and yet they decide to, if you register your colours, authority to trainers, all at a reduced fee if you're in the ROA. And yet, even though they're advertising that, they still try and force you to join it by unticking the box or virtually con you into joining.
But shouldn't owners have their own trade union, as you could argue the ROA is?
Yes, and you should be free to join it like any other trade union and not receive special incentives, if you like, from racing to join the Racehorse Owners Association. After all, the Racehorse Owners Association is negotiating with racing to get good things for their ownership, and yet racing is giving them incentives which... always with the threat that we'll take these away if we don't come to the same agreement once the spec's in the background. And maybe that's why it's done. To me, it just seems a problem waiting to surface and waiting for the OFT to look at it.
You think there could be legal action here?
Oh, I think it could be illegal. I've never took advice on it. Maybe they have. But it certainly leaves a bad taste in the mouth that they're getting these advantages. And at the same time, it's a false choice to join.
Going back to what you're known for and what you've lived your life for, bookmaking, at the end of the year there's coming in a consumption tax. There's a lot of feeling about bookmakers going overseas. In fairness, Bet365 and Coral, probably the only of the big firms who are still paying the regular taxes and levy over here. Would you, as king for the day, forgetting you were once a bookmaker, would you be concerned about bookmakers being overseas and the impression it gives the public and the consumption tax?
Well, I think the consumption tax should encourage them all to come back. That should happen. I can't think why you would want to maintain a presence overseas and not have it in this country where most of your business must be. particularly as any overseas punters who now bet with you in the UK, you will not pay any tax on that. And you won't pay any levy on that either if the consumption tax applies to the levy when it eventually comes in. Because you're only paying where the punter is. So if the punter's in Singapore, he's not going to pay tax or levy even though he's betting in the UK. This isn't a double-sided tax where the people in the UK pay where they are and other people don't. There's going to be a gain and a loss here to the government. They're going to lose all the overseas revenue from the tax that currently comes into the UK, although with most bookmakers abroad, they're losing it anyhow. But I would say that people will come back. Why would you not? Why would you want to be flying people backwards and forwards across the world, trying to recruit in places to provide a service, when you could equally do it here? It should drive them back to the UK in the longer term.
And finally, JB, do you hark back to your beginnings, street bookmaking, the phone system they had where you could bet, then betting shops came in. Now it's so complicated and it's so diverse, but the challenges and the opportunities for punters are far greater now. You could really argue, using the Harold Macmillan line, punters have never had it so good. The choice they've got with the exchanges and with bookmakers. Do you wish to go back to those old days, or do you realise now we can't change, we've got to go along with what we've got?
Oh, I think what we've got now is the most fantastic thing for punters has ever been, and the most fantastic thing for bookmakers has ever been. You can bet on anything, you can bet on any prices you like. Because it's not a turnover tax, you can set your odds as low as you like, because you're only paying tax on your profit. It makes it all the more competitive. When there was a turnover tax and you were paying 9% up front, well, first of all, you can't bet for 108% if you've got to pay 109 out in tax. Now you can bet for 108 and only pay the tax on the profit. And it's transformed the whole industry. And I think it's wonderful. And punters definitely never have had it so good.
And the latest controversy, FOBs, the machines in betting shops. Most people say that most betting shops would close if they weren't allowed. There's a lot of political pressure building up because of alleged problem gambling. What would you do if you were back in charge of William Hill? You're allowed 4 FOBs betting machines in each of your shops, maximum prize of £200. What would you do if that was really cut back by government?
Well, nothing you can do, is it? You just get on with it and restructure your business to accommodate it. The only thing I would say to the government, who are picking on betting shops for problem gambling at the moment, is all of those same punters have got a mobile phone, and everyone can pick up their mobile phone and play a casino game on their mobile phone.
And when the other game...
say everyone's got a mobile phone. I suspect there's not many of betting shop punters that don't own one.
Poker, roulette, whatever you want.
Poker, roulette, fruit machines. They might not be able to pull the handle or press the buttons in the same way, but they're pressing the buttons on their phone and it's the same result. Why pick on betting shops to say you can't do this when there's no limit on the phones? There's not a £200 limit on payout. There's no limit as far as I can see.
Now, back in the 60s, your old boss, William Hill, was reluctant to open betting shops. He was quite late into the game. Looking ahead, JB, in 50 years' time, will there be betting shops?
Difficult to tell, isn't it? I've always thought the most successful internet companies, certainly when William Hill were virtually first on the internet with bookmaking, were the ones with bricks and mortar base. And even now, I think, when you look at the successful companies, the John Lewis's, the Tesco's, Waitrose, with their home deliveries, they're all bricks and mortar companies turning the internet into a successful thing. So I think that will continue, that the bricks and mortar companies will be every bit as successful as the Amazon of this world, which were new internets.
JB, king for the day. May the king live forever.
It won't be forever, but I hope it's a lot longer.